how do you know what a red flag is, or how do you know how many chances to give someone, or how do you know kind of, you know, where to stop or where to say, okay, enough is enough. If you're changing your whole plan because this one guy wants you to be a certain way, or you suddenly feel like, you know, oh, I want to go and do all these things that, you know, I've kind of said I wouldn't do, you know, that's a red flag for yourself, right? It's a sign that maybe you're a bit out of alignment, or that there's something going on. And then you can kind of really go and address what's going on underneath. You know, is it fear? Are you feeling really frightened of, you know, saying no to somebody? And often there's insecurity underneath, where we think, if I put a boundary in, is this man still going to like me? Is he still going to be interested? Is he still going to show up? And actually, that's exactly what we need to know, right? When we're in the early stages of dating somebody, we need to know, if I honor myself, is this person going to respect that? And are they still interested in me, in who I am? Not just in, you know, what they want, what their agenda is, but actually in me as a person. How do we handle conflict, or how does this person handle conflict? You know, that's such great information. It's not just about kind of rules, it's also about, you know, how am I being treated? How is somebody showing up for me? And what does that really mean? So it is this kind of thing, right? So I think, you know, again, for me, I've had a tendency to, in the past, attract men who are quite angry and defensive and reactive, and like to gaslight or blame, or, you know, kind of shut me down or make me wrong, or, you know, whatever those things are. And so those things are just bottom lines, you know, for me. When you grow up with something, it's normal behavior, you know, it feels normal, it feels like, it feels familiar, right? And the word familiar comes from family. You know, it's really interesting how deeply rooted that can be, and how we can all also minimize and normalize what can be borderline abusive behavior, actually, you know, and then the impact that that has on us when we start having to then shut ourselves down and abandon ourselves and all of that stuff. So that's at the more extreme end. You know, at the more subtle end, it's just things like, you know, is this person showing up regularly? Do we want the same things? Are we on the same page, values wise, and all of that kind of thing, in terms of the big picture? And so, you know, the bottom line is, with dating, as I'm sure you're all aware, that it is messy by its nature, right? Falling in love is really messy, and perhaps it feels messy inside, but actually, in reality, what's happening, it's not messy, because you're being open and honest, and you're being yourself, and you're being authentic. And then if you can do that, you're going to absolutely find out exactly what you need to find out very, very quickly, before you get involved, before you get hooked in, before you kind of get too far down that road, which, again, I know for lots of you, that's been a thing in the past, right? And for me as well, where it's, you know, it just gets to a place where so much damage can be done, you know, in terms of the consequences of a longer term relationship that isn't right, and setting up a home, having children, getting married, you know, getting financially involved, all these things. And so I think the benefit of this structure is that when we have a structure, we have this clarity for ourselves. Actually, it does enable us to open up and be vulnerable and open our hearts, and take some more risks emotionally, without actually putting ourselves at risk in those other areas, right? Because we're kind of free. And so there's a strange paradox, really, in this whole area about freedom and commitment, which, for me, I had terrible fear of commitment for years, because, you know, I was so scared of getting involved, getting hurt, and all of those things. But then the irony was jumping in really, really quickly with people without really knowing them. And I think this is an opportunity to do things the other way around, right? So dealing with those slightly more difficult, challenging things up front in the beginning, and then just eliminating people who are wrong for you, and really only focusing on people who are a fit, right? Who are in alignment with you, and who are going to be able to kind of be safe to explore things with, right? From a dating and a relationship point of view. Sometimes it can feel quite restrictive, or kind of, you know, a funny thing, you know, when we start trying to apply rules and structure to love, it can feel quite strange. It can feel kind of like, well, how does that work? Because surely love is just, you know, this amazing thing that happens to us and strikes us, and, you know, and that's all well and good, but actually, you know, that can also be actually really dangerous and have really, really terrible consequences if we have had these issues in the past, right? If we haven't kind of managed to make those right decisions for ourselves. And I think that women are wired, primarily speaking, for security, because, you know, we have babies and we need someone to look after us, and so we have the, you know, often that's why when we get into attachment theory and we're thinking about, you know, in the early stages of dating, women in general, and again, it does happen the other way around, particularly when, you know, men have had distorted upbringings as well, and men absolutely do suffer from attachment problems both ways, attachment anxiety, and can be very needy and all those things. So, you know, it can work both ways. But I think in general, when we're looking at the dating landscape and the online dating landscape particularly, it is very much stacked in the favor of men in a general sense, just in terms of the way it's set up, in, you know, in the sense that I think men are just better at the early stages of dating. They, generally speaking, don't get so emotionally attached, right? They're much more sexually and physically driven. They're much more able to multi-date without feeling guilty, without kind of getting all up in their head about it, without worrying too much about, oh, am I going to hurt this person? Or, oh, you know, and they may have those thoughts, but I think they're just a bit more relaxed about it. They're able to just kind of go out and have these experiences without getting so, without it being so loaded, without all this analysis. And again, without kind of really over investing and giving so much, which, you know, as women, we have that maternal side to us, right? Where, you know, we just are wired, I think, to want to kind of have one person and pour everything into that person, right? So don't worry too much about anything. Have high standards for yourself, but low expectations of outcome, because we don't know people, right? So let's just observe and be curious and be a bit more like a man in our approach. But when we're talking about kind of masculine and feminine energy, that's something different. So we can approach it from a strategic point of view, more like a man, right? In terms of that stuff. But then what we're trying to also do is be in our heart space, be in our body, and actually create an opportunity for men to experience us, to experience that amazing, delicious, very unique kind of goddess energy. That is what it means to be a woman, right? That is what makes us so amazing and special as women. And men are amazing and special for other things in their own ways. But there is something that we have that men can't access very easily in the emotional realm, which is what I was sort of talking about a little bit earlier. And once you can start to experience that just for yourself and in your relationship with yourself, start to try and access that part of you. And a great way to do that actually is through inner child work, parenting that little girl inside of you, which requires for you to access your adult woman, right? Your untraumatized, loving, compassionate inner mother, and parenting your inner child, and what that actually looks like, because that can sound a bit woo-woo and like, well, what does that mean? What that really looks like is choosing yourself in every moment, having boundaries, right? And saying no, and choosing to do things that make you feel good, as opposed to constantly feeling like you have to please everyone else before, and then you're last on the list.